Hi, and welcome back to the Britt Mayer Show. Today we are joined by Taylor Dukes, a board-certified family nurse practitioner turned functional medicine trailblazer, who has transformed her own pain into a powerful mission. Taylor battled debilitating mystery illnesses, brain fog, fatigue, brain cancer, Lyme disease, and toxic mold exposure. After years of a medical system that failed her, she clawed her way back to health through a holistic approach, addressing mind, body, and environment. Now, through Taylor Dukes Wellness, she empowers others with practical root cause solutions. Think gut healing, detox, and hormonal balance, drawing from her journey to help people reclaim their vitality. A Texas-based wife, mom of 2 boys, and a passionate educator, Taylor's here to share the wisdom that she wishes that she had had and the tools that you can use to thrive. Let's get started. The sponsor of this episode is We Heart Nutrition. So I am a mom just like you. I'm very busy and I can get very wiped out. And I'm always seeking ways to re-energize in a healthy way. And that's when I found We Heart Nutrition. They have a wholesome women's multivitamin. It's packed with all the essential nutrients like vitamin D, B, zinc, and they're all high quality, clean ingredients. Not only do I love the supplements, but I love the company. It's family owned. It's a pro-mama company that donates to pregnancy care centers. And since I've started taking it daily, I promise you I have more energy to chase my kids and do what I'm doing now. Visit weheartnutrition.com and try the wholesome women's multivitamin that I have fallen in love with, along with a lot of their other products, and use code ROOTEDWINGS for an exclusive community discount. Taylor Dukes, thank you so much for sitting down with us. We get to dive into the world of functional medicine, which is, I feel like we're starting to hear that term a lot more, and maybe people are starting to understand what functional and integrative medicine looks like. But this is very personal for you because you didn't always start out as a functional integrative medical practitioner. So we're going to go back into kind of the early beginnings of Taylor Dukes. So you grew up in Austin, you trained as a nurse. And what was it that first ignited your passion for healthcare?
It's so interesting. I think I'm just a helper at heart. God wires us and gives us desires, and I'm still a helper to this day, but no one in my family was a nurse. No one was in medical field. Like, I can't say there was this one person that inspired me. I guess I just knew I was a helper, and that just felt like the right fit. Although my parents, when I was going to college, they're like, you're more of a businesswoman, which I am now, but they were so confused that I chose nursing. But I think I don't know, I was always a helper at heart, and that just felt like a career that, was right to help others.
Did you enjoy it when you were in the thick of it, when you were doing nursing?
I did. I really did. In nursing, where I went in TCU, it was really hard. And it was like most people are out partying in college. And it's like you had to know that you wanted to be a nurse because the schedule and the clinicals. And that's when I really was like, okay, God, this is it. Like I didn't have this inspiration, but I knew when I was in it, like this feels right. Although it was conventional at the time, very traditional, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, very traditional. But you probably didn't know anything outside of it. It was just like, oh, I want to go into health. This is what we do. We go into the conventional system.
You get a job at the hospital. That's just part of the program. But I enjoyed it. I didn't think otherwise. I didn't challenge the system or anything when I was going through it.
Do you think, out of curiosity, if what we'll get into, what happened to you hadn't happened, do you think that you would still be in the conventional mindset, or were there already little tangerine flags? That's what I call them. They're not quite red flags, but just little tangerine flags.
No, I didn't have any red flags about the medical system. Honestly, I was an adrenaline junkie. And so I just wanted to be a helicopter flight nurse, ICU, emergency room. Like, I love the fast pace. And so that's just what I thought I would do. And I cannot imagine doing that now, just like the stress and the long shifts and being a mom and a wife. That would just be so hard. But that's just all I knew and all I wanted to do.
Yeah. And I think the way that our brain works when we're younger is a lot different in how we look at life and long-term and short-term. So you started having fatigue, joint pain, hair loss during or after a medical mission trip, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So most traditional nursing students, you go, you take your boards and you get a job at the hospital, and God had different plans for me. And I had the opportunity to go abroad and do medical mission work, which was awesome. And I'm super grateful for it. And I learned so much. But it was after these medical mission trips. I was in Africa. I spent a lot of that time there, as well as Ecuador. I ended up getting flown back from Ecuador. I was having all sorts of mysterious symptoms. And it was crazy because I was never the sick kid growing up, just
Hmm.
never. It was like, it seemed like these symptoms came out of nowhere, but you could see it was like drops in a bucket over time. They started to manifest themselves. But yeah, I was having joint pain. My hair was falling out. And mind you, I'm like 21, 22. Like, this is the height of my life, right?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be
Young,
strong,
health. Yeah.
active. Yes. And I had all sorts of gut issues. I had all sorts of skin issues, full body rashes, acne. I was so inflamed. When I look back at pictures of myself, I can't even believe it was me.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I was this nurse that's supposed to be advocating for patients, and I couldn't even advocate for myself. I was really sick, going from doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist, and no one could really figure out what was going on. It just, they'd be like, here, try this prescription, or let's do a colonoscopy. And they were really focused on just like managing the symptoms, but not asking the why question. Like, why are you sick and what caused this? And what can we do to improve your health? It was more just symptom management and really symptom suppression just through prescriptions.
Hmm. When your health was worsening and you kept getting dismissed, were you on like the whole protocol of medicines and treatments that they put you on? Were you in the thick of that, or were you just like, I'm not even going to try anything, I'm so sick?
Yeah, no, I was doing everything, and being a nurse and just honestly just being a patient. If anyone's been a patient in our medical system, you are at the mercy of your doctors, and you believe that they know everything, and a lot of them do. And you know what I mean? But it just was one of those things that I was willing to do anything that the doctors told me. I didn't challenge anything, I didn't question. I was just so desperate to feel better that I'm like, sure, give me this prescription, give me this prescription. But when I was on 5 prescriptions, and then I was having colonoscopies and endoscopies, and no one was really giving me answers, that's when I grew frustrated, because I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm doing everything they're telling me to do. I feel like I'm getting worse in a lot of ways, not better. Well, one
Interesting.
thing would
Yeah.
improve, I'd have a symptom from another medication. And so then I just kind of felt like, and no one's talking to each other. I was going to this specialist for this specialist. And so I was frustrated, but I was doing anything and everything they said. And that's when I started to be like, honestly, it was my mom. I grew up in a really healthy home. We always go back to our roots, right?
Yeah.
And so, although some of it I'm like,
Even
Mom,
though we
that's
think we're
rather
not
too.
going to, we tell ourselves we won't, and then somehow we end up back there.
I am so much like my mom, and the things that I never thought I would do, I'm like, Mom, you were right. And
Hmm.
so my mom was the one that really advocated for me to go see a naturopathic doctor, or even a medical doctor that did more integrative, because she, again, her mom gut, like, that's real. God gives us that mother's
Yep.
intuition. She was saying like, something's not right. You've never been this sick kid. I've never seen you not be able to get out of bed without being in pain. So she's the one that really encouraged me to take kind of more of an integrative natural approach. And at the time I was like, well, I mean, I'm going to these doctors. If they can't help me, then how's this naturopathic? I thought it was voodoo medicine. How are they going to help
Totally.
me? So I was really skeptical, but I was desperate. That led me to a place where I was open to do anything.
So you kind of got to a point where you're like, I feel like I'm getting worse. I'm on so many prescriptions. I'll try anything. So
Yeah.
where did you go? Where did you end up? What was the next step?
Yeah, so I went to what I thought was a hocus pocus doctor, and I was a functional medicine doctor. She was a medical doctor, like licensed, board certified, can prescribe all the things. She's not just like this person in this wellness clinic that's like, go eat kale, you know?
Yeah.
And she spent an
Wouldn't that be
hour.
nice though?
Yeah. Well, some people, their perception of like holistic and integrative care, it doesn't look like that. Sometimes it looks like true trained physicians like partnering with you in your health and wanting to get to the root cause. Although it's not common, they are out there. And so
Yes.
I remember sitting down with her for an hour and a half. The forms were so extensive. She was like, so were you a breastfed baby, a C-section? And I'm like, I don't know, Mom, can you answer this for me? It's stuff that no one had asked me, that I didn't even know about my own health, which I probably should know at 20 something years old.
Hmm.
But she sat down and walked through my entire story. Did you ever have mono? Did you have strep throat a lot as a kid? Because she wanted to know about antibiotics and my gut microbiome. And honestly, after sitting down with her for an hour and a half, I thought some of the questions she asked me were a little bit out there, but I was like, whatever, at least someone cares. I felt really cared for the first
Yeah.
time after like a year and a half of rat race of, traditional medicine. And then she started asking me about my diet. And I was honestly really skeptical, because I was like, well, I've always eaten this way and I've never felt this. So it can't be diet. But boy, was I wrong, and I started having sensitivities because I had a leaky gut. And so she changed my diet. She got me off my prescriptions, which, hey, there's times and places for
Yeah.
prescriptions. I'm a nurse practitioner, and so I can prescribe. I'm all for it, times and places, but I'm not for, medicating symptoms and just suppressing
Hmm.
them with prescriptions. And so, yeah, I finally had hope for the first time, and I was able to get off prescriptions, and she had me on a lot of supplements, and I did a lot of testing, but I had answers for, my symptoms. And
Out of curiosity, because you said she approached your diet. That was one of the big changes. How was your diet overhauled? What changes did you make?
So I was just a traditional college student, I would eat fast food every now and then. I mean, I feel like, a lot of girls will try to make healthy choices just really in vain, like I was like, I
Hmm.
want to be healthy, but I was just doing like, no fat yogurt and some
Oh
like low
gosh,
fat
yeah.
cereal, just
Well, that
stuff
was the
like that,
thing back in like the 90s and early 2000s. That's what we were all doing.
Totally. Like we just didn't know. And so I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, like I thought frozen yogurt was so healthy. And just what I did, she had me do more of like a paleo diet of just eating fruits, vegetables, meat, avocados. And I felt so good. I'm not going to say that diet changed everything. I definitely saw improvement, but it wasn't like, everything changed overnight with diet alone. I had so much more going on. But
Yeah, and you had to
yeah,
wean off the medicine too. So you were still
yeah.
taking the meds. So you start doing this like diet overhaul, you're weaning off of your meds. Um, Before we go into like what happened next, what do you think was the most like in your face difference between this functional medicine approach versus the conventional approach that you had been pursuing? What was the biggest difference in all of it?
That's such a great question. I think the biggest thing was I had answers. Conventional medical model doesn't really ask the why question. They really try to focus on like, let's just treat the symptoms. You have a headache. Okay, well, here's a prescription for that. Oh, you have gut issues. Well, here's this. And I feel like for the first time, not only did I have answers, I had hope, but I also
Mm.
felt heard. And that was a game changer, to be like, it's like for someone to look at me, I felt crazy, but I wasn't crazy, but I did feel crazy because, the doctors were like, oh, well, your labs look normal. And they were only drawing a few things on me, And so I started to feel like heard, like, you're right. Like I have lost all this hair. And yes, I have a lot of hair, but like clumps were coming out in the shower and my thyroid was off. And so I just felt heard. And yeah, I had hope because I finally had answers and kind of a trajectory and a path to follow to healing.
Did she ever diagnose you? What was it that was going on that caused this first big issue in your life?
So I always say it's drops in the bucket. It was just the perfect storm. I was under a lot of stress personally. I was on antibiotics because when you go abroad, you get a ton of
Yes.
antibiotics to prevent malaria. I
And you
was also
probably had
given
to did you get all the vaccines to go to
I
Africa?
got all the vaccines, which
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know what I know now with my genetic
Yes.
mutations and things like that. But I remember getting 5 vaccines.
Same.
Uh,
I had the same, and the yellow fever made me pass out.
yes. Okay. I
It
had
was
yellow
so
fever.
intense. Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah.
remember going to the health department and I put up an Instagram post. Like I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, if only I knew what I knew now, what I
I
knew then,
know.
But I remember getting 5 shots and a lolly to go to Africa. And so yeah, so it was perfect storm. So I had all the shots. I was taking the malaria medication for 3 months, which is antibiotic every day, which destroys the gut. I was
Oh,
eating,
yeah.
it's one of those things. And then I got a lot of parasites because my gut was susceptible to that when I was over there. I got traveler's diarrhea, which we know that can be parasitic viral infections.
Yep.
And then I was stressed. And so my adrenals, my cortisol, my thyroid was super, super low. And that's where a lot of the hair falling out. I was anemic. I also had Lyme disease, which I didn't find out till later, but my body got better. But I found out later and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. The joint pain, the different
Yeah.
symptoms. But I found that out later because I had started to get better, by just changing my diet and getting on supplements and getting my thyroid on the right prescription. And then I was eventually able to wean off and all my gut issues went away. And
You know
so
what's wild as you're saying all of this is if you had stayed on the conventional hamster wheel, you would have never gotten to the root symptom. It would have just been masking everything for life. And then all of the side effects from all the medicines just continuing to mask those. How crazy is that? That you would have never
I actually
found.
can't imagine like where I
Yeah.
would be today. It would be so sad. Like who knows if I would even have children.
No. Yeah.
It was, yeah, it's really, I'm like, thank you, Lord, for protecting me and saving me
And
and
for your
rescuing me.
mama, for your
Yeah,
mom saying something.
seriously, my mom. Yes.
So take us to 2014, 2017. You
Yeah.
you start working with Dr. Amy Myers. So at that point, did you shift then and you were like, you know what? I'm not going to pursue conventional medicine anymore and I want to shift into looking more into this integrative approach?
Exactly. Once I had experienced the transformative power of functional, integrative, holistic medicine, whatever you want to call it, I was all in. I was like, this changed my life. Forget being an ICU trauma nurse. I want to go all in. And it changed the trajectory of my career. And I was like, I want to help people the way that I've been healed. And this is not something that, I mean, we're talking, back in 2013, this is not popular.
Oh gosh,
This now
no.
everyone's talking about it in Maha. There's a whole movement. But I was OG only because I was desperate and I was sick. So anyway, it was one of those things that once I'd experienced the benefits of it, just like coming to know the Lord. Like you can't not
Mhm.
share the gospel with people. It was like, I can't not tell people about this. This has changed my life so much that everyone needs to know about it. So I started working for Amy Myers as her nurse and learned so much. And then I also went back to school to become a nurse practitioner and eventually started my own practice because, changed my life. So I was like, now I can use my gifts to help others.
So you're doing that. You're in this new path. You are loving life. You're married. You have little babies. Life is really good, right? Or you're feeling good, zero symptoms. You're just happy as can be. You are thriving. And you are in 2022 now. Something changes the whole game for you. And
Yeah.
actually, just as a little background, this is when I think I first found out about you. I'm sure I had heard of you before, but I remember seeing your post that shared what happened next. So let's get into that. What happened?
Yeah, so curveball of my life. I was very passionate about education and I still am. That's like a huge part of my why. I love educating others. And so I had a blog and an online presence at this point, just because, again, I'm working with people one on one, but I can only help so many people. And being so passionate about this type of medicine and root cause healing, I had an online website and I would share everything on social media. And I had a company reach out, Pronuvo, that's a full body MRI scan. And they reached out and they were like, hey, we're getting a Texas location, can we gift you a scan in exchange that you would just share? And I was like, well, I want to do this anyway to be able to share with patients. And of course, like, why not? And it was really expensive. So I was like, great deal, great trade. And I did the full body scan. And literally 2 days later, I found out I had a huge brain tumor. And I was in complete disbelief because, again, like you said, I had no symptoms. I know all the symptoms of a brain tumor. So when I saw it on my phone and it was this huge mass in my brain, I immediately went through the checklist. I'm like, I don't have headaches, no personality, no speech, no memory, nothing, no seizures, nothing. And so I was in complete disbelief and denial. But, with follow up testing and meeting with multiple neurosurgeons, it was confirmed that Taylor Dukes, the healthy one, had a brain tumor.
Oh my gosh, I can't I still go back to seeing that post of I think you talked about how you were like at the beach nursing your baby when you found
Yes.
out. What was just on an emotional level, what was that like for you?
Heavy, hard. Anytime I talk about it with my kids, it makes me teary because I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have this 10-month-old. I'm nursing and life is good and we're on a family vacation. To be honest with you, I didn't think anything of the scan because, again, it's not like, oh, I'm nervous. What are they going to find? Because I'm healthy. I'm good. And so it was a lot of fear, and I've worked through, I'm several years out now, a couple years out, but it felt like a death sentence. It really did. Because you hear the word cancer, and especially when you hear the word brain cancer, it's like, oh my gosh, my life is over. So I started having all this flashing before my eyes. I mean, really, fear it was awful. But I was also in denial because I was like, there's no way this is me. And then, you know, I started worrying about, am I going to be here for the milestones? Am I going to
Mhm.
be here for my kid's first birth? It was so hard. But I also had hope. And that really just came from the Lord, that he gave me peace to see beyond my circumstances. I'm not saying I was always in this hopeful, positive
Yeah.
place. I feel like God, when you hear about that supernatural peace, like I know what that's like, being in the hardest of hard, but also having hope beyond your circumstances. I can seriously say, it's hard for me to explain it, but I know what that means because he gave me that. But it was
It's
very hard. I was very fearful, scared,
Oh, and
sad.
you must have just felt so almost like unprepared, because you didn't have anything that was flagging you that this was even a remote possibility. And then you're thrust into having to figure it out because correct me if I'm wrong, but it was not benign, right? This
It was
was
cancerous. Yeah, it was
And was
cancerous.
it a
So
tiny little thing?
no, it was huge. And that's what most people are like, what? How did you not have symptoms? I'm telling you, the whole thing is just a miracle. The way we found it, like the Lord's provision through that scan. But no, it was the size of a plum when they took it out.
How do
And
you have a tumor the size of a plum in your brain with no warning flags?
truly no earthly explanation. All neurosurgeons were like, this is crazy. I mean, maybe it's in this silent part of the brain where you're not affecting symptoms, but even a millimeter shift in the brain can cause symptoms. So
What do you think? How do you reconcile that? That doesn't even make any sense.
So honestly, I'm just like, the Lord was protecting me. I know that sounds crazy, and here's the other thing. So every time I've talked to neurosurgeons and oncologists, they say that it had been growing 8 to 10 years. So
Hmm.
we don't have evidence because I never had symptoms of when it started growing, but we can trace it back to that timeline. And I love for people to hear this because so many people can hear my story and live in fear. When I was sick, that is likely when it started growing. And then 8 to 10 years, we do this scan. So we don't know if it stopped growing. Maybe I would have never become symptomatic. I don't know. I can't play the what if game. I'm not God. I don't know all the details, but it was definitely a freaky feeling being like, and I didn't rush into surgery right away. I slowed down. I prayed. I'm like, okay, Lord, like clearly this didn't happen overnight. I don't have symptoms. I'm not going to rush into fear in any decisions. And I spent 5 months going to all sorts of integrative treatment centers, even dialing in my diet even more, which felt restrictive because I was already so
Yeah.
healthy. But I was going to do anything for my kids, like conventional or holistic, like give me anything and everything that I can do. I did hyperbaric. I did all sorts of infusions, oxygen therapies, all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, coffee enemas, all the things that you can imagine. And we
All
ended up shrinking
pre-surgery.
pre-surgery.
You're doing all of this. So
Yes.
hyperbaric, are you doing like ice cold baths? What is it? Cryotherapy?
Cold plunges, cryotherapy. I mean, yes, I did everything. I did high dose vitamin C infusions. I did anti-parasitic prescriptions. I was on probably 60 to 70 supplements a day. I was on ivermectin, febendazole, which have anti-cancer and anti-parasitic properties.
Yes.
I did so many different things. And so it did shrink actually within those 5 months before surgery, but I still ended up having surgery to get it out.
Did the doctor say anything about the fact that it shrunk? Is that normal or is that abnormal?
I think everyone was surprised and they're like, kind of like, whatever you're doing, keep doing. Like, we don't want to rock the boat type situation. But I think doctors were definitely like, wow, we don't really see this happen very often. It could have been that measurements were off. And I'm like, no, God has just been so faithful. And
Yeah.
I treated healing like a full-time job. I mean, truly it was like a full-time job, going to these clinics and traveling. And I would do 6 hours of therapies a day, even at home, wearing a red light helmet, laying on this mat, doing my sauna. And if anything, I also just prepared my body for surgery because I had a miraculous recovery too. I was in the hospital for 24 hours,
I want
walked
to ask you about going into the surgery, but before that, I'm curious, of all those things that you did pre-surgery, are you still doing any of those now just for maintenance and for health?
Yeah, that's a great question. So technically, I'm a couple of years out, I have no evidence of disease. And so most people would just be like, okay, I'll just watch and wait and do my scans. But for me, knowing that the likelihood of recurrence, just statistically speaking, I'm not a statistic, but the likelihood of it coming back is very, very high. And so I'm not going to settle for that. Yeah, most people think like, oh, you get it out, you're done. And it's like, no, the likelihood of it coming back is really high. But again, remember, I'm not a statistic. I'm not the average American that's living the average American lifestyle
Yes.
and eating the average American diet. Plus, I just believe only God knows the number of our days. I'm not a statistic, and I'm not going to be ruled by fear of man and what other people and what
Amen.
happens. It is one of those things that I'm not just sitting and passively waiting for it to come back. I'm super proactive. And so I still do a lot of therapies. I was in ketosis a couple of weeks ago. I don't live life in ketosis, although it is good for the brain if you have active cancer. And I took this anti-cancer serum. So I'm still doing things, for my health and prevention. I'm way less strict than I used to be because when it was like before surgery, it was go time. It was like I was doing everything. So I'm still on a pretty involved supplement protocol. I do infusions for Lyme for my immune system, but definitely not as rigorous as
I can
before.
hear the questions from the audience buzzing. People are going to want to know what are we're going to go into the treatment stuff, but what are the top 3 things that you started doing in between the surgery and your diagnosis that you are still doing today that anyone listening could benefit from?
Yeah, I would say healthy eating. We live in a really toxic world. And so now more than ever, we have to make a conscious effort to eat healthy and avoid a lot of sugar and things that cause inflammation, especially with cancer or any disease, not even just cancer, autoimmune disease, gut issues. So really, I would say eating an anti-inflammatory diet, managing stress and sleeping enough is huge. And I think so many people are trying to burn the candle at all different ends and do more and hustle harder and be more. And honestly, I had to slow down. That was me, myself. I owned a private practice. I owned a wellness center, and I had to slow down and reevaluate every commitment in my life. And so managing stress and getting enough sleep, just letting our body restore and detox, that's super important. And then I would also say, like, very unpopular, unsexy thing, but resolving emotional conflict and trauma is something that is so big. And I had a lot in my life, and I really feel like God used cancer to kind of just wake me up to that. And I'd gone to biblical counseling, I'd addressed things, but really like going deep and resolving emotional trauma and,
Why?
making sure.
Why is that? What do you think the connection is with that?
So the body keeps the score.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that, physical symptoms can manifest in different ways. But like for me, specifically, brain cancer can be rooted in unforgiveness. And I had someone really close in my life betray me. And so I thought I had walked through forgiveness, and I'd walked through reconciliation and gone to counseling. And I really feel like the Lord was just calling me to more, to deeper, like, have you truly forgiven them and let that go? Cause I feel like God doesn't just want our physical health. Like, I think he wants our whole hearts, and he wants us to heal emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like, that's what he desires for his children. He's a good father. And so for me, it was like going back and making sure I'd really walk through forgiveness and really let things go and surrendered things that were out of my control. Because the body does keep the score, and it
Yeah,
can
and we're a
manifest.
whole person. And it's interesting you bring that up, like biblically as a Christian, right? Our worldview is that we are whole people. And so it makes sense, like God talks about forgiveness all the time. He also talks about fear a lot. And there may be like a deeper reason to that in terms of how that affects our humanity versus it just being like, it's the golden rule. Just do it because
Right.
it's good. Like, no, it could actually be because as people, as human beings, we are wired with our pathways that is a necessary component of being truly whole and human.
There's so many things that we just settle for, or easy, to just be like, that person. And you know what I mean? But it's like, no, resolve that. Like, you don't want to harbor bitterness. That's why it says literally go ask for forgiveness, like
Mm,
figure that out before you go to the altar. And so I really believe like he desires whole body healing. And so,
yeah.
and obviously there's supplements and infusions and all that, but I would say healthy eating, sleep, stress management, and resolving emotional trauma is so, so important. There's not a single cancer patient that I've met that doesn't have a significant amount of trauma in their life.
Wow, that's fascinating that you said that. Really? You have found that?
Yeah. Oh, and it's not just like little T trauma. It's like big T trauma, like significant things. And I'm not saying that if you have a lot
Mm,
of trauma that you're going to get cancer either. I'm just saying, we know that stress automatically suppresses the immune system, and cancer is an immune system disorder. Like, this is actually interesting. You'll find this interesting. At any given point in time, we all have, no matter how healthy you are, we all have circulating tumor cells. But the way God made our bodies is we go and take care of those circulating tumor cells. But when we're stressed and our immune system's not working, that's when those circulating tumor cells can get out of hand and our immune system doesn't do its job and a tumor forms. And so, yeah,
interesting.
I know it's easy to talk about like de-stressing and sleep and all that, but I really, it's at more than just like a pep talk level. It physiologically, it affects our body and
Yeah,
our
that's the word I
neurotransmitters.
was looking for. Like the physiological level of what we've
Yes.
dismissed as being, it's just emotional, it's just relational, but there's a physiological component to it
Yes,
too. That
totally.
is, well, that's crazy what you just said about, I mean, my jaw's on the ground because that's, it makes sense too. And I think I
Mhm.
remember you saying, did you meet with Dr. Keneally and she
Yeah.
talked through that aspect of how, and Dr. Keneally is amazing for those listening. I'll put her info in the bottom, but she talked to you about how trauma in our life can set in motion our predisposition for the cancer. And it's like, it's kind of like a new thought that we haven't really been introduced to, but you've seen it. And a lot of these naturopath, integrative, functional medical practitioners are saying, no, there is absolutely a connection to this to be aware of. Yeah,
For
that's
sure.
wild.
And it's something that, I even saw, like, I used to have a private practice. I say I'm retired now because I had to focus on my health and being mom and, but it's one of those things that anytime I would meet with someone that had an autoimmune disease, I would always be like, what happened in the last year before you were diagnosed or before your symptoms started? And it was always a stressful event, a divorce, a loss of a loved one, a car accident, financial hardship. And you could always correlate the trigger of the autoimmune disease, which is an immune issue, to a stressful event. Like, they might have the predisposition if they have genetics. They might have, there's always drops in the bucket contributing factors, but there was always that one thing that it was like, I always found that stress was a trigger that just like broke the camel's back, the
Yeah,
straw.
that's something that I think this audience is going to really appreciate hearing because it's that kind of information that can help us reassess our lifestyle and the things in our life that are causing deep stress or the unresolved traumas that we need to work through. And as a Christian, that's where community is so important, and having like a strong church family that you can talk these things out and flesh them out, and Jesus is so good. So your approach was both it was integrative because you did go through surgery, which would be considered conventional, but then you also had all of the natural side of things that you were doing too. So that's functional medicine, right? Integrative when it comes together like that. And you said that the
Exactly.
doctors were like, I can't believe that the tumor has shrunk, but there is a chance, and we're not going to do statistics, that statistically speaking, it could come back. So how do you, like at this point of your life, how do you live through that now that you're on the other side of it? And how far are you out from that point?
I'm about 2.5 years out. So I just had my last scan in January. So I still have to do scans. I still have a neurosurgeon. I still have a neuro-oncologist. Even though I did not do chemo and radiation, I'm still followed by them very closely. And yeah, I mean, that's where, again, like statistically, they say it's going to come back, but I'm not watching and waiting and just doing my MRIs. I'm still being super proactive, and I'm asking the why question. Why did my immune system go rogue in the first place? And so we're addressing parasites and Lyme disease and the things that really can throw off your immune system. And that's where my approach differs a little bit than probably most, of just, but I'm also living my life. I'm not a slave to my medical treatments. I travel, I make memories. I don't eat out perfectly. Sometimes the joy of just being with community and breaking bread with friends is better than a perfectly homemade meal.
Do you do parasite cleanses like frequently?
I do.
Do you know I'm on a
week.
parasite cleanse right now. I'm doing like
the full moon.
Yes. So
You
at the
go,
time,
girl.
yeah, I totally, my whole family, I'm like, that's what the farmers used to do. They used to do, their whole family and the livestock would go through. We actually healed a family member through traditional Chinese medicine, which was in large part anti-parasite and parasite cleanses, which is kind of like a lost art. Is cancer connected to parasites? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, it's one of the things that stresses our immune systems heavily. I'm not going to say that every type of cancer, I'm not going to go and make that broad claim, is caused by parasites. But I will say, especially when it comes to brain cancer, the American Cancer Society and the International Journal of Cancer link a certain parasite that I have in my blood to gliomas, which is the type of brain tumor that I had in middle-aged people. And so there's undeniable evidence that parasites are linked to tumors, and especially brain cancer. So parasites in general just wreak havoc on our immune system. And when our immune system's not working, that's when cancer can get out of control. And so I absolutely think that people should be talking about this. It's not conventional, it's not mainstream, but I'm here to say that, like, if you have not considered antiparasitics as part of your oncology journey, you really want to consider it and do some research.
Plus, I think people are just kind of grossed out. They're like, I don't even want to think about having parasites in my my body.
I get it. It feels offensive.
No.
But I'm like, every other country does it. We deworm our pets. Like, people think that you have to live in a third world country to have parasites. And honestly, if you're eating sushi, pork, like, we're exposed to parasites in water and different things through animals. So it's, I don't live in fear of parasites, but that's why we do cleanse a couple times a year as a family.
It's awesome. Okay, let's talk about your Get Your Gut Right program and your Fort Worth practice, that your whole aim now is to prevent others suffering from a functional medical perspective. So talk to me a little bit about what you're doing and how people can find you.
Yeah. Well, so I practiced medicine for years and worked with patients one-on-one, just how I had been healed. But when I went through my whole journey and my healing journey, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to help everybody one-on-one. And that's what really inspired me to create the gut program, because when you fix the gut, so many other things fall into place. And for me, it was like my joint pain, my skin, my rashes. I stopped reacting to foods when I healed my gut. And so I never thought I could help people in a program, but we found a creative way to do it. So everybody gets a stool test, because I'm big on test, don't guess, like, figure out what you need and then, take supplements and do a protocol accordingly. And so that's what the gut program is. But it goes through 9 modules. You talk about nutrition and stress and detox, because it's not just a stool test and a protocol, it's a lifestyle. But I do find that when you fix the gut, so many other things fall into place. And then I also started a supplement line, and I'm really just passionate about creating healthier products for the whole family. And so for me, I'm a baseball mom, and my kids just aren't going to drink Gatorade at the dugout. I'm sorry, but we're not going to do food dyes and all the sugar and chemicals. And so, yeah, I've created electrolytes and protein powder. And again, like, a lot of it is like, what are things that I want? And then I'll just create it. Like, remember Country Time Lemonade? We made our own.
Oh my gosh. As soon as you said it, I could picture the little jug. I can picture like the little powder. Yeah.
Well, and it's full of junk, but like, I want my kids to have lemonade. I'm not a Grinch. And so we just create like a healthy hot chocolate lemonade. I just love creating products that you don't have to compromise healthy for convenient. And so that's what I do now.
I will say, side note, because I didn't plan to say this, but I absolutely love your electrolytes. I use them every single day. I'm not religious with my supplementation, but that is one thing I'm religious about, just because I look forward to it. I'm actually, when we get off of this, I'm going to make my little green drink and I throw the electrolytes in. I love it. And then I also love, you have like a blue beauty drink. It is so good. It's so good. The blue beauty drink, y'all. Oh my gosh. I don't drink anymore. I don't drink wine, or I gave that up a few years ago. So I look forward to like the fun things that have nutritional benefit and they look pretty. and that hits all the marks.
It tastes
It's
good.
so good. It's so good, and it's so good for you. It has like tell them what it has in it because everyone needs to go grab this. It's so yummy.
Yeah, so it has beauty benefits like tremella mushroom and amla powder, but it also has like collagen. But most collagen drinks taste bad, and this one has 5 grams, and it's so good and it's really refreshing. So it has like pineapple and spirulina, which is amazing. Has lots of health benefits, which gives it that pretty blue color. We don't use any natural color. We only use natural things to color it. We don't use any food dyes or artificial flavors or anything.
So
But it really
Secretary
is
Kennedy is not going to come after you and be like, you need to,
exactly.
you've already done it.
Yeah, but that makes my day. I love the electrolytes. And we just were like, it's not hard. We just want to use organic fruit juice powder with electrolytes, stuff that I can give my kids that I can drink. And you feel good drinking it too.
Yeah.
That's the biggest game changer.
I look forward to it every day. It's so yummy. I wanted to ask you a couple questions that came in, and for those who are listening, if you follow me, Rooted Wings, on across all social media, I always throw out to the audience if I have an exciting guest come on. I'm like, okay, tell me what questions you want me to ask because I'll try to hit some at the end. So, a couple quick rapid fire questions for you that came in. Someone wanted to know, why don't Western doctors think more along the lines of functional medicine? Why are they so opposed to it?
Well, one, they're not taught that in school. So, like, our whole school curriculum and training has to change. But one thing I will also say is that they're held to the insurance model to where they can only see people for 10 to 15 minutes at a time, maybe 20 minutes if you have a specialist. They don't have the time to personalize things. So, it's the medical system training, but it's also that their hands are tied by the insurance model. And most don't think outside the box. I think more and more people are starting to want to think outside the box because their patients are getting sicker despite all the interventions and medications, and they're running out of tools in their tool belt. But yeah, a lot of it, you have to change the education that they get to really, truly see a difference.
When your oncology team saw that your tumor had shrunk so significantly, did that at all pique curiosity of, oh gosh, like maybe we need to look at what you were doing because all these
Yeah.
anecdotal stories are starting to add up? Was there any curiosity or not really?
Yeah, I was asked to send my protocol. I was asked to send who I was working with. So whatever they take or do with that, I don't know. But at least I will say my neurosurgeon's amazing. He is very much like, did not push chemo or radiation. He wanted me to get into ketosis. He believes in a metabolic approach. So the reason I went to him in Arizona, I live in Texas, was because of his more integrative, mindful approach. So,
Was he
but yeah,
Mayo
people,
Clinic? Were you with
no,
Mayo Clinic?
he's at Barrows Neurological in
Okay.
Phoenix. But yeah, I know there's a Mayo there in Phoenix or Scottsdale, but yeah, he was very much on board. But yeah, people would write down and be like, so what did you do? And where did they were curious, but I don't know how much it sparked their curiosity to
I
like go
think
down a rabbit.
I feel like the more stories that come out like yours, though, I just interviewed a couple who got through the wife's stage 4 breast cancer after doing the whole conventional thing for a year. And then the cancer came back and she was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's going to kill me. They went to the antiparasitic, the fenbendazole. Is that how you pronounce it? They have completely healed like her breast cancer through this natural protocol. I was telling them it's these stories like these that are anecdotal, but at a certain point, it's like you can't ignore these anecdotal stories anymore. So hopefully we'll see a change with this, and even with the Maha initiative coming in. It's like, can we just get into a new era of all of this? Okay. Lots of people wanted to know about parasites and cancer, so that was interesting. Someone wanted to know where they can find an integrative health professional. Like, what is there a good way if I actually had people write in saying that they had family members with brain cancer. And so they were wondering, how do they go about finding someone like you who is integrative functional?
Yeah, so there's a couple different resources. If you want just functional medicine, I always say ifm.org. It's Institute for Functional Medicine if you just have like general wellness. If you have cancer, there's someone named Nasha Winters, and you can search on her website, like a practitioner library. Honestly, I have an integrative oncology blog post on our website because of my story, my team gets so many questions, and it's just a free blog post. You can go look, and we have links to where you can find cancer specific providers. I started a Facebook group. It's completely free. It has nothing to do with my business, just for integrative brain cancer patients. And that's a great way for people to connect or be like, where do you live? Where's the provider? There's, I think, almost 1,000 people in there. People are sharing resources daily.
Awesome.
But the integrative oncology resources thing on my website will have everything linked. And that's really helpful.
That Facebook page, how would people find that page you just mentioned?
if you're on Facebook, it's called Integrative Brain Warriors. And I just accept you to the group. I did keep it specific to brain because, again, there's just so many. That's kind of my story and my niche. And so it's nothing to do with my work. It's more just like God put on my heart to create that for other people to connect. And you just search Integrative Brain Warriors on Facebook.
Awesome. And I'll put all of this in the show notes too for people who are listening. So you can go back and look through all the notes. All right. Last little wrap up with you, and then we can say goodbye. And you're so lovely. This has just been so much fun. I love you. Just even you coming in the green room, I'm like, I just love you. You're so sweet. You're wonderful. And you are OG, which is so fun to finally have you here. Hope and action. So if you can leave people, this audience listening, with hope after they listen to this episode, I think it may raise a lot of levels of stress, thinking of all the unresolved stuff that could be a component to getting sick, or people who are sick and feel really helpless or feel like they're down a road with conventional and they can't get out. And so I think it can stir up a lot of just a feeling of being overwhelmed and stressed. So I'd love for you to just share your message of hope and then actions of what people who are listening right now, those little steps they can start to take to rein back control of their health and their healing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're right. It's so overwhelming to hear a story like mine. And people might be like, well, I have trauma and it's out of my control and that person died. I can't go forgive them in person, And so first of all, do not lose hope. If I can face stage 3 brain cancer and still have hope, like I promise you it is possible, whether you have an autoimmune disease or gut issues or you're frustrated in your health journey. I will say, obviously my hope comes from the Lord. And I hope that you know him too, because there's just no hope, joy, and peace like that Christ gives you. But I would also say if you are stuck in health issues and you don't feel heard or listened to and no one's given you answers, you have hope by looking for a provider that's going to partner with you to find answers. And those providers do exist, but they are harder to find. And if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything, I've tried diets, I've tried cleanses, I'm losing hope, I feel like I'm just crazy because everyone tells me my labs are normal, don't give up. Go find a provider that's going to partner with you and ask the why question, just like I was given, years ago. So just practically, those are things for hope. But I feel like taking action, I think it's also easy for people to hear about a health journey and maha and all these things and food dyes and seed oils and be like, where do I even start? And so I always encourage people to start with the basics. And what I mean by that is literally nothing has to be changed overnight. Think about the products that you use on a daily basis. So coffee, that's a great example. Switch to a cleaner coffee. And once you mentally do that, then maybe you run out of your body wash and you switch to a non-toxic version of that. It doesn't have to be a whole overnight overhaul. Silence the noise on social media. There's so much polarizing people. Find a few good people to follow that you trust and take their advice, and try not to get too inundated and in the weeds with all the health advice, because sometimes it can feel so overwhelming that it's not attainable. And perfection isn't the goal. It's just healthier choices that are consistent over time that add up. But yeah, like I love what I call free medicine or free tips, like get outside, get sunshine, get fresh air, get sleep at night. Those are the things that we forget about. We always think we have to do the next cleanse or the next supplement. And as someone who owns a supplement company, I'm telling you, don't buy the supplements. I mean, do, and they're amazing. You should try them.
At least get the blue drink.
Yes, and the electrolytes and the protein. But like before doing all of that, focus on the basics. So like, are you eating nourishing, healthy food? Shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Don't get fixated on a diet. Get outside, get sunshine, get fresh air, have meaningful relationships with loved ones. Those are the things that are so important. Get enough sleep. Start sleeping 8 hours. I really dare you. But it's like, those are the things that are so important that people forget and lose sight of when they're trying to start their health journey. So get the foundations, and then you can up level from there and do a parasite cleanse or try my protein or whatever.
What about if people are there, if they're like, okay, I've done those things, I've cut out all the bad stuff, we're doing seed oil free as much as possible, what next? Are there any of those modalities that you used early on in your journey? Like you talked about cryotherapy, red light therapy, grounding. Are there any of those that you're like, these would be great? If you're only going to pick a couple, these would be great. What would you say?
Well, now that you said grounding, I feel like that is a basic one that people forget. Take your shoes off, get your feet in the ground. That can be so calming for your nervous system and so great for stress relief. And it's free. That's another one. But I would say detox, making sure you're sweating. So if you're not going to workout classes, if you're not breaking a sweat working out, a sauna is a great way to up level that. I personally love an infrared sauna. I use it 3 times a week. It's amazing. Another way to detox at home if you don't have access to a sauna is detox baths. So you can just do warm water and Epsom salt and some baking soda. 2 cups Epsom salt, 1 cup baking soda. And that's a great way to detox. And if you're in the bath and it's warm, it opens up your pores, you're detoxing. So I love sweating. I feel like that's really important. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, you can get into liver flushes and parasite cleanses and things like that, which I have a free I'm so passionate again about education. That's like I'm education before selling products. And I have a blog with so much information on liver flushes and parasite cleanses. And I'm just so passionate about that. And so if you want to know more about detox, I also have information about castor oil packs. It's a very cheap thing that
Yes.
people have done for years. You put castor oil, you can buy a pack, or you can just use an old t-shirt that you don't care about getting dirty and put that over your liver with a heating pad for 20 minutes a couple times a week. And that's amazing.
I love that your tips are like when you tell me all these things, I'm like, gosh, it just sounds so much more simple than all the noise that yells at you nonstop. It's like, oh no, you can just get a
Like dry
ratty
brush,
t-shirt and throw
dry
some
brush.
cash. Oh,
And
dry brush.
yes, like that's so great for your lymphatic system. Go do that before a shower
Do you do
and before
ice,
your
the
detox bath.
ice on your
Ice roller,
face, the
yes,
ice
I love
roller?
it. It
I do it
wakes me
almost,
up.
oh, it feels so good. I do that thing almost every morning down like my
Lymphatic.
décolleté. Oh, feels so good. Yeah, but it's simple, simple, simple things.
Yeah, and if you don't have an ice roller, then I'm like a cheap, easy way is get a bowl of cold water, throw some ice in there, and do a facial cold plunge. Like it doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, we have so many blog posts about detox on a budget because it gets overwhelming. And
Yeah, and
I
expensive.
do have a lot of the biohacky things because it's been things that have been accumulated, gifted over the years, or things I've invested in with the cancer journey. But like, you don't have to have all the fancy, shiny things to be healthy. There are a lot of
You don't
cheap
have to
things you
be
can do.
bougie to be healthy.
That's
Okay.
right.
Oh,
You heard
this
it
was
here.
wonderful. I just loved having this conversation with you. You are a walking miracle, and I think your story will help so many people. And I love that you simplify things, that you make it so it's like it's attainable. You beat brain cancer and you have a story to tell, and it's simple and it's beautiful and it's rooted in Christ. And I love to the emotional relational connection that you're like, no, 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 we are whole people. Like it's not just an arm part. Like we are a
Yes.
whole human. How can people find you, find your blog if they want to look into all those things that you were talking about, that you have blog posts about all these things? How can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, so my website is just taylordukeswellness.com, and that's where it has the blog article, all these free detox guides, tons of resources. That's what I'm so passionate about, is the education. And then on Instagram, just Taylor Dukes Wellness.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor. I'm sure we'll have you back on again, but I just appreciate you so, so very much.
You're so sweet. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored.